folks, Mike Anderson here with Living Motion Monograms and the 1% Solution, back again, and today we're going to be talking about how do we make changes to size. How do we resize our monograms to fit better at the events? What I like to do is actually do 3 different sizes, so when I get to the event, I can make adjustments either on the projector using the optical zoom, which is our little adjustment on the projector itself, or the digital zoom, which is usually on the remote, where you can zoom in and out. And the difference is really just the optical zoom is done with the lenses, so it's actually making the screen bigger. Now, and that's the optical. The digital zoom is just zooming in on the file or zooming out on the file that you've created, but the screen size is still the same, and that's going to kind of come into play as we talk about this as well. So I'm going to show you a couple methods that I use to create those, and let's go ahead and I'm going to close this out here. And first thing we're going to do is find a design we like. So let's go into our tools disk, we'll go to monograms and go to monogram samples. This time let's go ahead and use, this will be a good, let's use something with a few different layers here. And number 11. Then we go into our Photoshop templates. We're going to select template 11. It's going to open up. We're going to update. And in one of the last videos, we showed you guys how to make those changes to the monograms themselves. We can, as far as like changing the names, today we're not going to be doing that. I just want to show you guys a couple different ways of resizing. And so with these monograms, a lot of them are going to have effects added to them. So you'll notice I'm going to zoom in by hitting my Control and plus and minus on my keyboard, and that lets you kind of go in and out on the design here. But if I select the names, and off to the right side here we've got, if we double click on the T, that's our text icon, that's going to select all the text. Little shortcut there. But down below you'll see effects, and if you don't see them, sometimes there's an arrow here you can click. It's going to open up our menu and select bevel and emboss. So we've got bevel set at 640 and the size is actually at 4 right now. And so as I go up in size, you're going to see that it changes and starts to add that embossing effect or a bevel effect around the edges here. And as I go down, it becomes less. I use this a lot in the designs to create a little bit of a 3D image, almost like it's coming off of the wall itself, and definitely looks better with larger fonts or larger designs. So for like this one, we can just maybe put it at 1 here, and by selecting, going up here, you'll see our designs at the top and bottom. Which is layer 1 and layer 1 copy. And if we go and double click on the effects area just below it, it's going to open up our effects window. Now I can add any one of these effects on by just clicking our boxes. So if we wanted to do bevel and emboss on this, it's a larger image, so we'll get a better idea. The more depth we go, the more sharper the edges are going to be. But if the depth is really high and I start to make changes, if the depth's really high and I start making changes to our size, you're going to notice that difference here where it adds that shadowing in there. Or if we go into the center, there's a difference between, say, this thicker area, and it's going to be consistent all the way around. So let me lower this a little bit and I'll show you guys what I mean. So if we're at 1, we've got a thin line around the entire edge. As we go up in numbers, we can come up to right about, like, say, the center in our thinner part, but then it starts to open up when we have actually more surface area in the rest of the design. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's going to be important depending on the method you use to resize your image. So let's back out, Control minus to back out on the screen. And in this design, you can see a difference here. We've got bevel and emboss on the top here, and no bevel or emboss on the bottom design. So the first way to resize is to go over to the right, and we're going to select our first layer and hold down Control, and you can start to click the other layers. So that is layer 1, which is our top embellishment, and say our names. So now we've got those 3 layers selected. Now, depending on the version of Photoshop, I'm using Photoshop CC 2015 for this. If you're using Photoshop Elements or Photoshop, one of the other years or versions, there could be some different variations, so just try a couple things. The first thing with mine is that I can just grab this corner and make it smaller, but you'll notice that I can go both ways. It's not keeping the aspect. If you mess up, you can always hit Enter, and by holding down Control Alt and Z, it's going to go back a step and bring it back to what we had before. So now we still look over here on the right, and we've got our layers, all 3 of them selected. So now what I know is I can hold down Shift, and when I do that, grab the corner, and as I make this smaller, what's going to happen is it's actually going to make all 3 layers smaller. And then you can grab the design, bring it back, more towards the center here, and line it up. So what does this do? Well, when we want a smaller design, we don't want to lower the resolution. What we want to do is actually make the design smaller, so we have more of the the black showing around the edges. That's going to let us still project, say, from a longer distance, but the image itself isn't going to be nearly as big. So we're able to project a farther distance. It helps out quite a bit. So I might do one at full size, one at this size, which is medium, and then I might do one just as a small size. So depending on where I'm projecting from in the ballroom that day, I'm ready for almost any situation easily by just changing the file and not trying to change the position of the projector. So let me go back a step here and bring this up. Now, the other thing I want to point out is by using this method, if you're using Photoshop, say Photoshop Elements, usually you'll have to, once you select your layers, you're going to have to hit Control and T on your keyboard. That's going to activate Transform, and that will allow you to resize everything together. So, and usually with Photoshop Elements, you don't hold down Shift. You just grab the corner and make it smaller, and it will maintain that aspect ratio. But if I go back, if you are using Photoshop Elements and you hold down Shift and then drag, what's going to happen is just the opposite of what happens here. See, it's maintaining that aspect ratio. But if you guys hold down Shift in Photoshop Elements, you're going to be able to go squeeze it tighter this way or anywhere in between. So it flip-flops back and forth a little bit. So try, see what works out for you guys. The reason I wanted to show you this method, it's good for a lot of things, but if you have design elements like our effects added, one of the things you'll notice, we're going to make it smaller, and I'm going to zoom in. It has actually altered. It's going to maintain your effects that's on that layer. So off to the right side here, if we look at layer 1, which is our top graphics design, and go to bevel and emboss, we still have the same values here, but we have a smaller image, which means it's going to look different than our original design. So you're going to have to either lower our values here to make it look like our other design. Or I'll show you a different way of doing this, and that will make things a lot easier. So we'll back out, zoom back out here, and I'm going to bring this back to full size the way we had it before. So our second way of doing this, which is really easy if you're using bevel and emboss or drop shadow, anything like that, first thing to do is go and hit save and save as. Make sure you save a copy of this somewhere. So even if it's on the desktop, and I like to save my designs by the event date I'm using it on. So 5/16, do something like that. And we're going to save it as a Photoshop file. That way, no matter what, we've got a backup of what the original is. Next step is we're going to highlight our layers on the right side here by just clicking our first one, hold down the control button, and then go ahead and click the layers we want to select. I never select the background, I just leave it the way it is. If you do select the background, when you make things smaller, you're also going to make the background smaller, so we will start to, that black box that I've created for you, get smaller and smaller, and you'll start to see a white border. So we've got our 3 layers selected. Next thing, go up here to top of the screen to layer, and we're going to scroll down to merge layers. Now by doing this, what we did is we just took all 3 of those layers, made them into one. Now we don't have to worry about, there's no effects attached to them. You also cannot edit those effects as well, but it's going to lock in those values. So now when we come down and select this layer, you may have to hit Control T still with certain versions of Photoshop, but now you can either drag the corner, and no matter how small we go, if I zoom in, now this is kind of ridiculous here, but you'll notice the actual effect, or zoomed in a lot, made this really small. Let me hit enter here, it'll clean it up. The effect itself is the exact same, and so it locks in that value. It makes it to where it's going to look the same. But that's also a really good lesson here, is that the smaller we make this image, usually the larger it's going to be on the wall. Kind of reverse. The projector is going to project a larger image, or in this case a larger black box, and our design is going to be smaller on the wall. Now there's a limit to what we can do on that, because the more we make, the smaller we make that image, as we back the projector up, you're making those pixels that it's projecting larger and larger and larger. So the guests are going to have to be farther back away from the design to get a nice crisp image. So same thing, if we're up close, it kind of looks jaggedy. As we back up in the ballroom, now it looks smooth for the guests. So the more distance that the guests have, a lot of my events, guests are seated right underneath the monogram, so it definitely looks a little bit different there. And I'm going to go ahead and just back up to our large size here. And the reason why I saved the original is because if I want to make go back and make any changes, I'm going to use the original, and then I'll just go ahead and combine those layers if I want to make my final slides. So I'll save a version as a JPEG image, and go to Files, Save As JPEG, and we're on desktop, and we'll just do large, save. We're going to go to our next one and just make this a little bit smaller. Let's center it up here. And we'll save this as medium. Same thing, make it even smaller. Again, we're hitting Control T on Photoshop Elements, and If you've got like Photoshop CC, you pretty much can just grab the layer and drag it and make it smaller. Save as again, and this is going to be our small version. So JPEG small. So we're still in, as you can see, we're still in our Photoshop file here. We're just saving a couple different versions. So now as we close this out, off to the side here, we've got our large and our small. And I need to resave our medium because I did not save it as a JPEG. So JPEG, medium, save. Okay, if you can imagine, you're at your event, and I'm just going to open up the window here. And we zoom in, and we just notice, oh, that's way too big on the wall. I'm 20 feet away from the wall with my projector, and this is covering just like, you know, a lot more distance than I wanted. What I can do is just go to the next file. This is going to let us make the design template, you know, it's our smaller version. So now it's smaller on the wall. Our projector hasn't moved, but the image is smaller. So now we can also use our adjustments on our digital zoom and optical zoom to make any other subtle adjustments. And again, we still have a smaller version, which will make the image even smaller if we need that that image to be even smaller. And then we can use that digital and optical zoom to make the changes as well. So two really easy ways to change the size of your monogram, and just to kind of better understand what we mean by making different size monograms for the event. We're not making the image itself, the overall image, smaller. What we're doing is we're making the design smaller on the same size canvas. And that canvas is our file here, the black box. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below if it helped you out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Lots of great content that's going to be uploaded very soon and ongoing. Check us out on Facebook. We've got two pages, the 1% Solution group page and the Living Motion Monograms group page. Both just ask to be a member of it, and we'll accept you or we'll approve you. 1% Solution group page is based towards performance-based advice, critique, and just being a better performer at your events. And the Living Motion Monograms page is dedicated to the techie side of all this. So if you have questions on video projectors, on doing videos, making monograms, video mapping, and all kinds of content, you can ask questions there. We get them answered pretty darn quick. So also check out livingmotionmonograms.com. A couple discs available to you guys in our store there. The Volume 5 Tools disc, which has all of these monogram templates. All the designs that you see on livingmotionmonograms.com are available on that design disc, and they're usually available for $99. Anytime we come out with an update, you get the updates for free. So we're going to add to your library on an ongoing basis. New designs to continue using. So it's a one-time investment, and I think it's already pays for itself in just time savings. So check out what all is included in some of the other videos on Introduction to Tools, and we'll put a link to those introduction videos as well. Once again, Mike Anderson, 1% Solution and Living Motion Monograms. Go out there, make your events great, everybody.